Well, let's explain to your audience first who the Power of 10 is so they know what to expect.
Okay.
But basically, I am an author and speaker and just an average person, but I meditate a lot, and I have mediumship abilities and am highly intuitive. And so a few years ago, I started allowing the Power of 10 to come through my body vehicle, and all they are, to kind of simplify what the process is my spirit guides, which means I believe in reincarnation, and these spirits have been with me in other lifetimes, and they're here to guide me as they are here to guide us all. We all have spirit guides and angels and other divine beings, whatever you want to believe in. And so I just take it a step further and have a direct conversation with them rather than me trying to interpret through my limited human perception what kind of messages to give to each individual and also collectively for the entire world, especially at this stage in humanity's growth and transformation. There's a lot of chaos going on in the world, and so I do believe they are profound teachers, especially of peace, much like Abraham Hicks. But beyond the laws of manifestation and law of attraction, creating a better world for all of us. So they come from a different dimension, a higher dimension than the slower moving dimension of this one. And so you'll get a chance to interact with them. And much in the way that we do for our private consultations. You can check those out at wearethepowerof10.com /consult, or we also do workshops around the world. We have one coming up on the 19th here in Florida where we live. And you, of course, can check out all of our best-selling books. We have 3 #1 books, Manifesting Miracles and Money, Peace is Power, and Keep Your Spirits Up. Those are all on Amazon, or you can link to it at wearethepowerof10.com. That's just a little bit about us so you can have a framework of who Darren will be asking questions with. It is not me. I swear to you, it's not me. I know it sounds a little strange, but gosh, I'm not that wise. And it comes from a much higher place. It is very rapid. I sound a little different. There's a little bit of an accent just because it's a spiritual being articulating in human form. So, but do listen. It's powerful. Suspend any preconceived notions and just listen to the message and see if it resonates for you, and hopefully it will. And you can also contact us at on Facebook. We have a wonderful group called Power of 10 High Vibe Tribe, where we share uplifting quotes and things from the Power of 10, as well as just to keep our spirits up for everybody. So we really want to be a beacon of peace for the world, so especially with everything that's going on. So with that, now I shall go get them. Darren, thank you for letting me speak about the Power of 10 a little bit before we launch into it. So I'm going to meditate. Feel free to meditate with me. It only takes about 30 seconds, and then I'll come back, or they will come back for me as the Power of 10. And here we go.
Thanks, Michelle.
And yes, we are here. Welcome. Thank you.
Okay, Power of 10, thanks for talking to me today. Okay.
Thank you for the opportunity to teach.
Okay.
Yes, thank you.
Okay, first question. So many of us in our world today struggle, whether it is to pay the bills or look after our families and or suffer from a physical or mental illness or addiction. Do you have any words of advice or encouragement for those of us who find the struggle of life really hard going?
Yes, absolutely. And so you're now in a space of great rampant evolution. And what is happening is many of you are choosing to focus on what you consider an obstacle and suffering, as you call it, and problems, when all of your power in this dense world of yours is to focus your mind on the solution and not the problem. When you continue to focus on what is, you create more of what is. When you create more of what could possibly be, then you will focus on that dimension, and it has to come to pass, you see. We want to share with you that it is a time to focus on not out of faith, not out of suffering. So if you continue to say, oh, I'm suffering, life is so hard, it's so terrible, and you try and stuff the void, what you deem a void, with different various addictions and drugs and sex and alcohol and even working out and whatever you do to fill the void, rather than being present with all that is inside of you and turning within toward all the love and abundance and hope and health that is indeed inside of you, and that is indeed in the many billions of dimensions beyond this dense one. If you could remember that you have been that way more often than you have been in this dimension, where you believe you could re-enter, and remember that your thoughts always create your reality. Your thoughts always create your reality. You see, you are vibratory creatures. You're all made of energy. If you looked at your hand through a microscope, you wouldn't see something solid. You'd see something that was dynamic and moving. That is the truth of you. And so what happens is you go through somewhat of an amnesia when you re-enter this planet. Actually, when you're little children, you remember now, don't you? It is only when you get older and well-intentioned adults start telling you, quote, the reality of what is, which is that life is hard and that life is a struggle and that you must suffer to get ahead. And we are here to tell you it is the exact opposite. Remember what it was like to be a child and to play and pretend that you could do or have or be anything you wanted before the world told you otherwise. And you felt amazing and light and free. That is the truth of who you truly are. And in fact, you go off into your adolescence, where you start to question yourself and have doubts and worries and fears, yes? Then you move on into adulthood and you work and work and work and you feel like you must have and gain and do and do and do. And then you go into old age, if you're lucky, and you remember what it's like to be a child again. You see, before you re-enter the great beyond, because we are here to remind you there are many, many, many dimensions beyond this one limited one that you see with your eyes. If you start closing your eyes and seeing from a heart space and aligning with the truth of who you really are, you would move past the suffering into faith and hope and even joy. Yes, joy. Because it is in that state of joy that you attract more joy. And when you radiate joy, it is contagious in a good way. It is where you attract all good things and opportunities and adventures, and others see that, and either they are excited about it and align with it and join you in creating an entire community and world of peace and love and joy, or they are so far gone that they are repelled by it, and they must go through their own soul agreement lessons, and you must let them be until they choose to slowly climb the ladder of emotion, because emotion is just vibration. Emotion is just vibration. We'll say that again, because many of you say, but, Power Fen, you don't understand. I'm sad and depressed and alone and angry, and we understand that. And we are not telling you to suggest otherwise. And yet, we want you to feel those emotions, embrace them, and then choose to move beyond that. Choose to move beyond that, because from that space, you will attract more of the same. And so what happens is, we'll give you an example right now in your world. And your entire continent of Australia is on fire. It's on fire. And everybody keeps posting pictures on your social media of how horrible it is and these terrible images. And as you focus on that, you're creating more of that. And yet, what is the solution? You see, many of you pray and focus and visualize. We want you to not just passively pray, but actively visualize rain pouring down on the country, which is already happening. And you can understand that from that contrast, what is the lesson? What is the opposite of that contrast? It's learning that indeed your planet, it's time to come together and understand that, yes, your climate is changing, and you need to keep up with that change and create new laws, not just for each individual state and country. Those are man-made boundaries. You see, it's time to come together as one world, as one spirit, expressing as each individual soul. You'll understand that when you die and move into the dimensions beyond this limited one. You see, you'll get it. But right now, if you could just choose to focus on the solution rather than the problem, your focus is everything. Before you incarnated into this lifetime, you chose with the entire power of God, source energy, love, whatever you want to call it. We like the word love because it is universal. So the entire force of love came beyond you, and you entered into this dimension where thoughts create form. You did that. You chose a family collective to learn from and grow, and now here you are. If you could create something from nothing, from that dimension of all that is, of bliss and love and joy, and now come into this world of polarities and contrast and learn, really learn what you don't want. Because from that suffering, you can say, ooh, that's not what I want. What do I want? And then move from there. What do I want?
Okay.
Okay, we'll stop talking now and let you ask more questions.
Okay.
We're on a roll.
Okay, I interviewed Michelle 2 months ago, and she expressed her vision to me somewhat in that interview, that this year 2020 and future years are going to be years of profound change with all the contrast we have been experiencing the last few years. Yet I am following some people on Twitter and YouTube, some very serious sounding people, who say that in the not too distant future we are going to have a worldwide recession or depression that is going to be worse than the Great Recession we had 10 years ago. Bearing in mind that a lot of people still have not got over the last recession, can you tell me if any good will come out of another big recession or depression? Because it seems to me that if we have another one anytime soon, that is going to send a lot of people over the edge, you know?
Yes, yes. And so this builds upon what we just spoke of, you see, because in the next year, and of course what we explain in our books and our events, is that there is truly no such thing as time. You see, that is a man-made notion, yes? You created a system so that you could all meet up at certain times. And for instance, for this interview, Michelle knew that she was going to speak with you at a certain time, but that is man-made. And so understanding that all your financial systems in all parts of the world are man-made, yes?
Yeah.
They're man-made. And many of them are very old. And it's time to rebuild those systems. You upgrade your telephone every year. Michelle was laughing at the commercial that there is an iPhone 11 already when she just got an iPhone 10. And those are not cheap. And so you keep changing all of that technology, and yet many of your laws and systems are very old. There is nothing to be afraid of. And in fact, if you continue as a people to focus all your energy on the fear, then you will create more fear and war and depression. Look at that word, recession, going backwards. So again, ask yourselves collectively, what do we want? Do we want to go backwards? Do we want to go forward and evolve? You see, out of technology, you can create great problems or great collectivity and coming together and unity, yes? And so why not start from scratch, build upon what you already know, and innovate entirely new systems that are good for everyone, that create not have and have not, but have and have. What if everybody had food to eat? This is not idealistic. What if everyone had a roof over their head? How would that feel? You are all one people. Start acting like it. When any one of you is suffering in the world, you all suffer to some degree. And so when you start to understand yourselves as the one and build systems based on that notion, it underlies everything. Even in the American dollar, it says you are one. Yes, in Latin, you are one. All of your government systems understood that at some point, even if it was hundreds of years ago. And so from that basis, coming together, not basing it on some founding fathers that were hundreds of years old, but also were very patriarchal and were not all inclusive, not even of women, which are half your population. You see, evolving. In 2020, we think it's no accident that you symbolize those numbers with seeing perfectly. See what needs healing in your society, in your community. It starts with your community and your world. And also going back to seeing what needs healing in yourself. Because if you're all connected, then whatever you heal in yourself heals on a grander level. And that's really all you have control of anyway, yes? Of course, if you're on the front lines and you're in a leadership position to help, that is fantastic. And yet, if you're not, does it do any good to complain and moan and groan to people about the state of your government or your world? Or no, all that complaining creates more negativity and it spirals you down energetically. If you understand you're all energetic beings and that your vibration is scientific, this is not some woo-woo spirituality, new age nonsense. It's from a physics standpoint. From a physics standpoint, every reality is happening all at the same time. And so tap into the reality you want, not the reality you don't want. If you keep saying that, yes, there's going to be a recession, it's going to be awful, everybody's going to be broke, you're creating that. And yet, during if you look historically, some of the people that made most of their millions happened during the Depression and Recession. What was different? They thought differently. They focused on a positive solution. And so if you can come together, this is a great, amazing, wonderful, transformative time if you allow it to be. You see, this can propel you forward as a collective. Because think about individually, whoever's listening to this right now, whenever you've gone through something really difficult, and if you've lived long enough, you've gone through something painful. And after that, it propelled you forward because you learned from it, or you got stuck in it and you're a miserable human being, in which case you're probably not listening to this interview. You see, but you could do that on a much larger level now. You see, if you all came together and realized that from this painful collective experience will come rampant healing and growth and new systems, innovative systems that perhaps you're not really thinking about creatively now because you're too immersed in the problem. You see, many hundreds of years ago, do you think anybody knew what the internet was? No. It's only been in the last decade or so that all that's come about. And so there are solutions that people haven't even conceived of yet, that are out there in the ethers, that you have to allow yourself stillness and peace, meditation, yes. Meditate, even if it's for 5 minutes. Clear yourself of those doubts and worries that will lead to individual depression and collective depression. You don't want that. What's the opposite of that? The opposite of that is peace and joy and thriving. Prosperity, yes. Health for everyone. Abundance for all. Because there's a part of you that you believe that's too idealistic, but you didn't as a little child now, did you? You all came together If you did fight, it was for a minute, and then you made up and you were best friends again. That happens all over the world. Learn from your children. They have more to teach you than you them. Learn to come together. This is a chance for great opportunity. Don't pass it by. And even if you do go into recession, so what? You've been in recessions before and you came out of it, yes? Every single country in the world has gone there. And then you came out of it. And this is just one dense dimension, we promise you, out of billions. Try to remember the love and joy and bliss, yes, bliss, that exists when you leave behind the density of this body. You all share that. You're all going to die whether you like it or not. That's truth and what you signed up for when you entered this reality. And when you die, because you don't have a body that knows pain, you don't have to feed it or clothe it or house it. You don't have to worry about people stealing from you. There's nothing to steal. You have no belongings. You don't need food, you see? And so you just lounge around in bliss and peace, and like we do, and sometimes you choose to return because you think it's an adventure. And then when you get into this lifetime, you realize that it is, in fact, a great challenge. Or you can use that opportunity to propel yourself into greater levels of peace while you're still here, which is what we suggest, and which is why we come back through Michelle's body vehicle to share this with you, because there's some part of you that resonates with this truth, or you would not be listening right now.
Okay. Third question, and you may have covered some of this question already. It strikes me that it is often very hard to stay in alignment if you have a physical or mental illness or an addiction, because very often there is a chemical or physical imbalance. Is there anything people suffering with these problems can do to stay in alignment or balance more, in your view, that is perhaps not very common knowledge?
Yes. And so we would say that when you have what you deem mental illness, okay, let's break that up. You have a mind, you have a brain that thinks, and again, when you die, you no longer have a physical brain, you are part of the collective. But as you are a part of this earth and you exist as a human being, sometimes you have chemical imbalances. But we'd also like to offer you something of hope, that this earth, this planet, provides so many plants and organisms and minerals. There is something to heal everyone. You just don't always look hard enough for it or share that information, because often people get greedy and give you chemical answers that often creates more damage and more side effects than good. But there is an answer you just keep having to ask, what is the solution, and listen to your intuition to guide you there. We would also like to offer that many of what you call mental illness are just highly intuitive people that are called crazy by the greater collective because they don't understand it. Many of your native tribes welcomed people who were highly intuitive, and they were considered shamans and chiefs and medicine people. You see, it's all in your perception of what you deem mental illness. Many of you feel like you're depressed or mentally ill because you're in a society that is very upsetting. You keep watching the news, which focuses on the negative, and you feel bad, and you're not in alignment with that. You know that there's a higher truth, and so it feels bad. Pain feels bad. Being around other toxic people feels bad. Be around those who light you up, who love you, who feel good. Be out in nature. This world of yours is absolutely beautiful. If you feel sad or upset or angry or alone, go find a plot of grass or a waterfall or a pond or an ocean. Everywhere in your world is beauty. It's focusing on the good. There is always something to do to focus on the good. So yes, that's one part of it. You can perhaps have a chemical imbalance that needs balancing. There's perhaps your focus that could change, perhaps people that could help you point the direction towards your healing. And yet the other part is trauma. You see, what is trauma? So again, we go back to how we started this wonderful conversation with when you're a child, you come straight from the other higher realm where you understood love and peace and bliss and play. That's why so many of you are attracted to the light and love of babies or pets or animals, because you see, they are in the present. They just worry about if they soil their diapers or they're hungry, and that's it. And they cry and they let you know. They're very present, you see. They know what it is. And yet, some adults don't, they can't, they are so sad and so immersed in the negativity of the world and how they can't get ahead and focus on their problems, that being around that much love and light is almost painful. And so they spread that despair to their own children or other people's children in terms of teachers or any type of position where you interact with the next generation. And yet there is hope, because with each evolving generation, they are more intuitive, more filled with the light. There is such a thing as evolution, spiritually, physically, on every level. And they're being born into more accepting families that don't reject what they have to teach, yes? You see it. Little children see spirit. They aren't guarded yet. They are not turned away by the rest of the world. So there's hope with each generation. Applaud each generation. Yes, it may be different from what you grew up with, and different isn't always bad. What happens with trauma is when a young child who is full of hope and light is abused in some way, physically, mentally, spiritually, you see. And yet, when a child survives that, and you've all, if you believe in many lifetimes, as we are here to suggest that there are many, many, you are all old spirits. You're not special if you think you're an old spirit. All of you are at this point in time. There may be some young souls, but they're certainly not listening into this call right now. Old souls have been around, and all of you have been through trauma. You see, there are dark ages in every single country, yes? Where you've been beheaded and gone through horrible atrocities. And yet, you have this beautiful gift of amnesia when you enter a new incarnation. And yet, deep down in your subconscious mind that's collected to all of spirits, you know you've been through that trauma. And yet, what would happen if you knew and focused on every trauma that your soul's ever experienced? You'd be depressed constantly. And so you get a chance to renew with each lifetime. You get a chance to renew every morning you wake up, and you choose to focus on what you're grateful for, on the fact that you get to live out another day, that you can choose the emotions to feel, that even if it's as simple as you're here and you have a bed, because many don't. That's how important gratitude is, and we're not the only teachers to tell you that, but it's true. You focus more on more, and because that becomes a habit, you focus on the fact that the sky is blue, or even that it's cloudy and that it's raining, because it depends on the part of the world. Right now it's raining in Australia, and that's a good thing. More of that, more of that. Beautiful in your world. Focus on the trees that are growing, on the flowers wherever you are, and the fact that you are able to breathe. That is a beautiful gift, and lift yourself up one vibratory emotion at a time. It may be slow. You may be in physical pain. And then you can remember a time when you didn't have physical pain. And then you take your mind to a place that's beautiful, a wonderful memory. Perhaps you're on a beach or with good friends, or playing with a child, or tasted a good meal, and then you bring yourself emotionally out of that, so you feel a little less physical or emotional pain, and now you start to feel hopeful again, because hopefulness is the turning point where you lift yourself out of a state of low vibrational, emotional ick to something a little higher, and now you know that the higher realms are possible. And then you start to feel more positive. And then it's okay. You see, you realize that, you realize that you can move yourself out of doubt and into a state of love, an unconditional love that accepts and embraces everything and realizes that there is no good or bad, right or wrong in the afterlife. There only just is. And the same is true for you now. There only is just is. When you stop labeling things as good or bad or right or wrong, you start lifting yourself into a state of peace. And from that peace and freedom, you gain abundance and health and wealth and joy and radiance where you can give back, and then you recycle it all. You see, once you gain a state of abundance and prosperity, it's not all bad unless you hoard it. You want to give freely, and then you give to others, then everyone is happy. You see, when it's circulatory, when you give back and it feels good from that state of plenty. You see, that's what we hope for you all, that you come from this place where you realize the power that you contain within, to focus on that next level. Maybe you don't jump from despair to joy right away. That would be ridiculous. But you can jump ahead from despair to perhaps hope, and then peace, and then freedom, because your internal state is freedom. You have that within you, no matter what the external states of yourself or the world. You see, when you can get to that place, we guarantee that, yes, the law of attraction is going to magnetize all beautiful things your way. It comes from a state of exhilaration because you live in the vibratory universe. And so, yes, you have to look at what are you attracting in your life, but you can switch out of that. If you're attracting people that attack you, perhaps you're not an attacking negative person, but perhaps you're seeing yourself through the lens of a victimhood, or from this idea that everything bad happens to me. If you're telling yourself that deep down, even if it's not conscious, that's who you are attracting. Change up the dialogue. In your mind, when you hear that negative thing that was probably told to you by some adult at some point in your life, say, no, that's not for me now. I choose to live a life of joy and peace and abundance so that I may radiate that truth and impact all who are around me. We hope that answered the question.
Okay, that's great. Thanks. I read in one of Neil Donald Walsh's Conversations with God books that it is advisable for human beings to live more simpler lives, and this includes to live in areas that are quieter and that are less densely populated. But I've also heard from other people that living in cities or urban areas is better for stimulating our creativity. I'm just wondering if you have any advice on a spiritual level into what is the most ideal living situations for people in the world today?
Yes, we believe that whatever resonates as truth to you is the truth for you. You see different people at different times in their life too, yes? Their energetic level responds to that of what they're around. And so, for example, when Michelle was younger and she had lots of energy and she was in her 20s and she loved being stimulated, the urban environment was fun for her. Living in a quiet environment would have been too stark for her. There was nothing to do. She would have been bored, and from that boredom would have created destruction, you see. And yet, as she gets older, she loves the peace that countryside provides. She moves to the mountains where she could be alone and write and allow us to come through her. And that was a valid time in her life. And then she traveled out to where she is now by the ocean. And it was somewhat in between. It wasn't all city, but it wasn't all country. And she knew, as did her husband, Joda, that they both felt a buzzing and an excitement because they knew it resonated with their very soul, that they were supposed to live there. What if you went through life just allowing yourself to resonate with the people and places and jobs and friends and lovers that lit you up. You see, places have their own energetic imprint. And so, yes, if you want to lead a more meditative life, like someone like Neil Donald Walsh, where he receives what he deems God, we call it source energy or the universe or spirit or whatever you want to call it, doesn't matter, just a name, another man-made name, a higher force beyond this limited, dense environment, then yes, a louder environment, you're not going to be able to hear that. But that doesn't mean it's bad. Just building on our last conversation, there is no such thing as right, wrong, good, or bad. Everybody has their own truth. When you start fighting against the truth of another, they're in their own level of evolution, yes? You wouldn't tell a toddler just learning to walk that they were wrong. No, they're at their own stage of development. You wouldn't tell a teenager that they're wrong in their feelings, because we've all been there, including us, because we've lived your lifetime. Everyone has gone through that as a stage. And so all this fighting of each other, this is the right way to eat, this is the right way to dress, this is the right way to believe. What are beliefs except for thoughts that you think over and over again? And many of them have been fed to you. What we would like to ask of you, what feels right for you, you see? When you travel to a place, does that feel good? Or perhaps you just are meant to travel there, not to live there on an everyday basis. Sometimes people mistake that. Or they live in the same place their entire life just because their parents chose to live there. But that wasn't their choice. It's a big, big world. And we suggest you wander so you realize that, yes, people may have different cultures and those are just different belief systems, yes? And yet, you are all the same. You all are born the same way. You all die the same way. You all re-enter a spiritual state the same way. You all need to eat. You all defecate. Some of you get sick. Some of them you get well. You all have bodies. You all learn and grow and change no matter where on this giant world you live in. So wander and stop telling yourself you can't afford to. When we hear you saying that, Power of 10, I don't have the money or the means. You do have the means. Focus on why you want to be there, picture it, and then allow all that needs to happen to deliver that to you. You see, when Michelle lived in the mountains, she knew that was good for a time, and then she changed and evolved, and she kept picturing water outside of her window, even though it didn't exist, and she didn't understand, because when she was in California, it didn't really resonate for her. And then her TV show happened to film out here in Clearwater, and she knew instantly, and she's looking at the water right now. We're looking through her at the beautiful water, and that was what she visioned. She had no idea how that would happen. Stop focusing on the how. You see, that's manifestation 101. Stop focusing on how it will be delivered. Focus on the feelings that will come, and feel those feelings now. You have it all backwards. Feel what it feels like. How do you want to feel? If you want to feel stimulated, then yes, the city environment might be the best for you. If you want to feel quiet and meditative, then go to the countryside. Now, where we would also like to agree with Neil Donald Walsh is that you can simplify your life, whether you live in the city or the country, wherever you are, because the less you depend on others, the more you can have your own independent state, and you can focus on your own health and well-being. You see, for instance, if you are constantly relying on others for food, and then you get sick because of the chemicals that they put in the food, then eat organic. And if there's no place for you to eat organic, then grow your own food. You can do that. You have soil somewhere near you. You can do it if you live in an apartment. You can get a little planter and plant. Michelle made zucchini and grew all kinds of zucchini and lived on zucchini when she didn't have a lot of financial help. You see? Because really, you make life really complicated, and we're here to tell you All you really need is to cover your body from the elements. Yes. You need to feed your body. You have a body on this plane. And so you can grow your own food. You can even sew your own clothing. You can recycle your clothing. You can go to a thrift store and get clothing that others have discarded. You don't need tons of it. You start deciding that you need all these things because you're told you need it, and you're trying to fill the void that doesn't exist. Fill that void with the unconditional love that exists throughout the entire universe, that you will return to when you leave this plane of existence. So once you have the basics, you see, then you don't rely on anyone else. And the same is true of your country. Stop relying on other countries for oil or for electricity. You have solar. You have a sun. You all share the sun. And so utilize the power of solar energy, and then you decrease your dependence on anyone else so you have nothing to complain about. Do that, and you set an example for others. And the best way to influence others is by succeeding in your own life. Yes, simplify. And then if you want to add to that, that's not bad either. You see, if you want to add to that and add something of beauty to your world, perhaps you see a shirt and it's a great color and it makes you feel confident and you have the means to get it, by all means manifest it. Even if you don't, picture yourself in that shirt and imagine how you would feel, and perhaps you might find someone gives you that same shirt, because those kinds of things happen all the time in this vibratory universe. It's not a bad thing, but slowly add what it is that you want. And the experiences also, because it's not the stuff that you want, beyond just the food and the clothing you see and the roof over your head. What kinds of experiences make you excited? Many of them don't even involve finances, you see. Michelle loves walking on the beach. That's free. That's free. Walking in your neighborhood is free. Admiring your surroundings. Meeting with a good friend is free. If you don't have any friends, go to the grocery store and smile at the checker. You see, you're all connected. All of that makes a difference. All of that makes a difference. So yes, simplify, and then add as you deem fit, and only those things that light you up. And get rid of the things that clutter the mind. You see, so often, many of you have so much you can't even think straight. Michelle just cleaned out her closet this morning, and it felt really good to organize all her shoes. Half of them she doesn't wear anymore. She's giving them away to someone else who will love getting those shoes that are practically brand new. And she's picturing whoever's wearing them with joy. Recycle. There's many of those things that other people can use, and don't be afraid to take other people's cast-offs, and then someday you'll be in a position to give to others. How good does that feel? How good does that feel?
Okay, Power of 10, I've no more questions for you. Is there anything else you'd like to get across to impart before we finish our conversation?
Yes, this has been the most wonderful conversation. We appreciate the opportunity to come here in the here and now in this year of 2020, a great year of clarity and peace. We want you to come together and turn inward and realize, think of that word, realize the love that exists in all of you, no matter where you choose to exist on this planet. And remember that part of you exists in the great beyond, in the many dimensions beyond this one. You are in many different places at once. We know that blows your mind. But we want you to understand that there is more to you than what you see in the mirror, you see. And spread that great radiance, because this is your time. This is your time to focus on the good, to focus on the love, to focus on the joy, so that you can spread peace on your planet. That's just what we've come here to teach you. And so we love you very much. If no one said that to you today, know that you are loved. Your guide loves you. You are very, very loved. And with that, we say goodbye for now.
Thanks very much.